Alright, I'm 30 years old, and if you're older than me or if you're around my age group, you might not be familiar with this particular content, or maybe you are. Alright, alright, first of all, I have to ask you, have you ever heard of the subgenre of hip hop called Chicago drill music? If you have, then you understand where I'm gonna go with this. Okay. ChiefKeef came out with his hit song I Don't Like in 2012. And once Kanye West got on the remix, it blew up on a national level. All right. That's how ChiefKeef blew up mainstream. But the real reason ChiefKeef blew up with the teenagers and the people who were in his age group, because he was 16 at that time, is because of the large amount of information that was available about his particular gang, his particular neighborhood, and the level of violence that was going on not only in his particular city of Chicago, but in his particular gang war. He was associated with a particular gang called the Black Disciples, and they were at war with another gang called the Gangster Disciples that was only a few blocks away. So somehow, when ChiefKeef came out, his fan base and the masses of teenagers and young adults were able to find out information firsthand, detailed, nuanced, backed up by pictures, backed up by tweets and statuses of the actual combatants of the war through the internet. They were able to find out who ChiefKeef's friends were. They were able to track down their Twitter profiles, their Facebook profiles, their Instagrams, and eventually ChiefKeef's fan base was able to structure and create uh, a very accurate concept of what was going on in this particular war between ChiefKeef's gang and his rivals. All right, so ChiefKeef's rivals, they were also rappers. And what made these Chicago young rappers unique was the fact that they were actually talking about openly who was getting killed in the gang war. They were openly dissing the dead, the deceased, the people who were murdered in the gang war. They were shouting out the people in their gangs who were killers. They were actually speaking about real events that actually happened when people got shot. They were actually shouting out the people in their gangs who were notorious shooters. So, for the first time ever in hip hop, we've got these young rappers who are not just speaking about crime in a general way, they're actually chronicling and giving you detailed, nuanced, exact information about what's going on in their particular gang war in their particular city. They're giving you the names of the killers. They're giving you the names of the people who have been killed. They're giving you the names of the people who they want to kill. So this, and then if you combine that with the fact that all of these people that are associated with these rappers, ChiefKeef's camp and his rivals' camp, if you combine that with the fact that all of these people have Twitters, they have Facebook accounts, they have Instagram accounts, and they're just as open about the war on their social media accounts. They make tweets talking about, if someone got killed, their rival will make a tweet saying, laughing about the fact that they got killed, and they will claim credit for it. He got killed, we did it, or just tweets claiming shootings. Like a rival might tell the other person, the other day you were running from me, I was shooting at you. Ha ha ha. I know you're happy you got away. So, for the first time ever in hip hop, there was an actual gang war that was viral, where you can actually be a spectator of it, you know. And on each side, ChiefKeef's side and his rival side, all of these rappers started to spring up. You know, these rappers took advantage of the fact that now there's so much of a spotlight on Chicago. There's so much of a fan base paying attention to this gang war because they're able to be involved in it to the point where they actually know the names of the killers. They know the names of the shooters. They know the names of the people getting killed. They know the names of the hoods. They know the names of the blocks. They know which blocks get along with with other blocks. They know which gangs hate other gangs. They know which gangs hate each other. They know which gangs get along with each other. You know, they have access to all of this information. So now, you know, the regular gang members are starting to see that there's a huge spotlight on their city. There's a huge social media following. There's websites dedicated to like fan websites dedicated to chronicling the actual gang war, giving you play-by-play information on what's happening and giving you live updates on who's getting killed or who's getting shot or which block is no longer friends with another block, and so forth and so forth, or who dissed who in a song, and a whole community of media is starting to be created, you know, to chronicle this gang war because it's so much information available on what's happening through the music and through the gang members themselves in their social media. So now that the spotlight is on Chicago, all of these rappers are starting to pop up on each particular side of the war, right? And this isn't the only war that's going on in Chicago. It's multiple wars going on. And now that Chicago has the spotlight on it, all throughout the city, fans of drill music are starting to discover just as much information about other particular conflicts that are going on in inner cities. And they also have rappers that are doing the same thing. I'm just using ChiefKeef's gang and his rivals as an example of what's happening citywide. All right. So now you've got these, if you got the big rappers on each side, like ChiefKeef is a big rapper on his side, and this guy named Duck was a big rapper on his rival side, right? Now you're starting to have these smaller guys, these more local guys who aren't really rich, who don't have record deals. They're starting to actually make videos now because now there's actually a community of cameramen in Chicago who are also taking advantage of this newfound fame and attention that Chicago is getting. So now it's cheap to make a music video. So now you've got all of these various rappers coming out of the blue representing each particular side. And as soon as a rapper comes out, they're dissing the other side, they're making fun of their deceased people, they're talking about how their gang is going to kill their gang and all of that type of stuff. And with every song that they come out with, they release more information about the gang war, and that feeds the ecosystem, the bloggers, the YouTubers who are chronicling all this stuff. And it's creating an atmosphere where now these gang members realize that they actually have an audience because their gang war is now viral. So whatever they do in the streets is going to be talked about on the internet. So now these guys are aspiring to be killers because now they've got YouTubers making videos about who's the biggest killer in Chicago, who's got the most bodies. And they know that they can become basically famous in the gang culture in their city if they can make it to these blogs and stuff. So they pursue that through rapping. But the problem is rappers get knocked down, they get killed. A rapper comes out, he starts dissing the other gang, then he gets killed. A rapper on the other side starts dissing that gang and making fun of that rapper who got killed, and he gets killed. And this goes on and on and on and on and on. And all it's doing is feeding this ecosystem. You got the blogs, the YouTubers who are talking about the events that are going on in the streets. You got the people in the streets wanting to get that attention from this media, you know. So they're going hard. You know, they're rapping about very detailed real events that are happening in the streets. They're trying to position themselves as the biggest killer. And they're doing all this stuff not only to get attention from the blogs and the community of media that was developed as a result of this viral war, but also they think that it can help them become big rappers, because a lot of Chicago rappers went from small local guys to big time millionaire rappers as a result of being known as a street dude, a killer, a savage, you know. So in a weird way, this viral war has given gang members in Chicago the opportunity to actually make it in the rap game. All they have to do is succeed in this crazy ecosystem where you've got you've got these YouTubers and bloggers talking about real events that are happening in this gang war. You've got the gang members themselves arguing with each other over social media and making fun of each other's deceased homeboys. It's dangerous. Chicago, every year that goes past, Chicago is getting more and more murders. Real life murderers are being known. These bloggers and YouTubers are actually letting us know who has the most murders, who killed who. Here's this guy. He has 10 bodies. He's the one who killed that guy last week. Like real, actual information. And it's getting to a point where the actual gang members are starting to feed these blogs and these YouTubers real information from the streets in order to boost their name up or to give them a buzz. Because in this community of death, gangbanging, openly talking about what's going on in the war, stars are starting to rise out of this. You know, you're having roses rise out of the concrete, to say. And these young kids are teenagers. They're young and they want to be famous in this world of violence. All right, so now fast forward. This culture that I just explained has now been in existence for like 10 to 12 years. So the people who grew up on this particular culture, who lived in different states and different cities outside of Chicago, their city and their state may not have been that violent. There is no viral war that's being documented by bloggers and YouTubers in their city or state. They're not, it's not normal for them in their city or their state to constantly talk about what they're doing in the streets, constantly talking about the violence that's going on in the streets, disrespecting the dead, and just basically releasing so much information about what's going on in the streets to the point where bloggers and YouTubers can actually make a living from, reporting on it. Chicago was the only place like that. So after 10 of 12 years of Chicago being known as the only place like that and being unique in that regard, it influenced the entire country. So now the entire country, 10 years, 12 years later, after Chicago hit the scene with all of that stuff, now the entire country is not even mimicking anymore. The Chicago culture was so intense that it permeated throughout the entire country. So everybody who was a teenager at that particular time, because that Chicago scene was so popular that if you were a young person in your 20s or a teenager or even in your 30s, you heard about it. But the younger people got more submerged in it. You know, fans all over the country were able to tell you who real killers were in Chicago gangs. And these guys weren't famous, they weren't rappers, because the killers, the gang members in Chicago, have fan bases. They're not famous, they don't rap or anything, but they have fan bases because they have blogs and YouTubers talking about them and elevating their status as a killer or whatever. So this culture spread throughout the entire country. Now, all over the nation, it's fashionable to do what Chicago was doing 10, 12 years ago. Trying to be the biggest killer. Letting everybody know your business in the streets. Let everybody know who you have a problem with. Letting everybody know who's a shooter, who's a killer, who's the most violent one in your gang. Rapping about real life situations that are actually occurring in the streets. If your rival gets killed, rapping about it on a song and making fun of him. Now all of this stuff is the norm for people in their 20s because they grew up on Chicago culture when they were younger, teenagers. And I think this is one of the main reasons, one of the primary reasons why America has seen such an uptick in violence now, because Chicago set a precedent. And one thing about it, each generation that comes next is worse than the previous one. So if the first generation was like Chicago, talking about tweeting and making statuses about who they killed, these young kids being so blatant and so open about what's going on in their particular city in terms of the gang wars that they're involved in. They have no shame about it. You know, if that's what the first generation was doing, now the generation after that, quite naturally is going to one up that and go even further. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end it right here. But yeah, even to this day, you have forums, communities on Reddit, all over YouTube, dedicated to not only chronicling the violence and the gang culture and the viral wars that are going on in Chicago, but all over the country now. New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Memphis, Florida. Now, the way that Chicago had its own ecosystem of bloggers and YouTubers who would report about the gang war to the fan base of the music, now this is happening all over the country. Every major city, every violent city that's experiencing every violent city, every major city pretty much has that same ecosystem now. So the Chicago culture has spread, and now it's become just American culture. And a lot of people don't realize that, because a lot of people weren't really paying attention to Chicago 10, 12 years ago. Or if you're a young person that was a teenager back then, you just look at that as just your culture. That's just what was going on when you grew up. So you don't really have the ability to distinguish between what was going on before the Chicago thing blew up. After, you don't have any frame of reference. But I do, because I was around in 2010, 2011, 2012, and I seen how Chicago culture was impacting and influencing my own city in Richmond, Virginia. The teenagers here were trying to talk like the Chicago kids, thought, smoking dope. Chicago has invented so much slang that is now a part of the American slang lexicon that it's not even funny. I mean, it had such a huge impact all over the country. Like I said, the kids in my city were really trying their best to imitate these Chicago gangbangers, these Chicago rappers. And in 2012, when ChiefKeef came out, that's when I realized how big of a deal it was, how big of an influence it was having. Because my city had its own unique style at one particular time. The street culture was unique. It was uniquely regional. Then when these kids got a dose of that Chicago culture, they all became like addicts of it. And they just imitated it, tried their best to be like these guys. And now that 10, 12 years has went by, it's fully absorbed into the digestion of the youth of the American street culture. And now it's just the norm everywhere. Peace.